Hi, my name is Jessica Messenger. I was born in Augusta, Western Australia. I lived in Margaret River for a couple of years, and then in Newman, which is a mining town up north, and Mandurah. When I was in high school, I moved to Perth about 6 years ago. When I was a kid, my parents weren't as wealthy as a lot of the other people in town. Everybody else wore sport shop clothing, and I didn't. And I used to tell kids, when they said, "Oh, why don't you wear sports shop clothing?" I'd say very arrogantly, "Oh, because, you know, like surf shop brand label clothes are made in like slave factories by small children." And it wasn't. Why? And I don't think, honestly, at 9, that I cared about that. I used to be a real shopaholic. When I was 18, I was on this huge income and living at home and not paying any rent, and I just bought thousands of dollars worth of clothes. And then I quit my high-paying job and went to work as a missionary actor on basically nothing. And I went to Thailand, and there was this massive flood while I was there, and I got stranded in Chiang Mai for 3 weeks. And I remember walking through the floods one day through the middle of the city, and there were factories that had like lost walls, and there were people working in these cramped conditions, millions of people in these tiny sheds sewing away with water around their feet, and little kids with bricks and mortar making the dam walls up against shops. Even the people who were working for themselves in really good businesses where they got paid quite well would say things to me like, "Oh, I can't take a day off," because I'd feel bad about my customers. And I came back and just thought, what kind of a world do we live in where there are entire nations who think that their purpose is to provide for us white people? They're just a holiday destination, and they make all our stuff for us, and they don't get holidays or nice stuff because they're some sort of substandard human being. I put myself on a clothing ban for a year, and when that year ended, I went to Valley Girl or some cheap little clothing factory type store, and I looked at this $10 dress and felt sick in my stomach, and I couldn't buy it. And that's when I started to look into fair trade seriously. I started to research on the internet. I just Google fair trade, ethical labour conditions, specific products, specific brands that I always thought were good. Were they really good? They never were. That was the really shocking thing. It wasn't like, oh yes, this brand is particularly bad and this brand is particularly good. They were just all so unethical. And I started to realise, like, we're so conditioned that cheap is good. The more we can get for the less amount of money is better. The more money we can get so we can buy more things is better. And I started to realise that things cost money for a reason, and if we pay less, somebody somewhere has paid that cost for us. So when I sat down and I wrote The Shoemaker's Daughter, I wrote a play about struggling with talking about this issue. I wrote a play about wanting happy endings and wanting entertaining stories and not wanting to offend audiences or offend people. And what I got was this really crazy, really funny play that had the capacity to talk honestly about how people make shoes, what labour conditions in other countries are like.
I've nowhere to live. I don't have a birth certificate, and I don't know my last name.
Okay, do you have any special skills?
I can make shoes. I've worked in a shoe factory all my life.
how we as wealthy Westerners can actually do something to make people's lives better in other countries, but still dealt with that conflict, dealt with that struggle, dealt with that shame, so that the audience didn't have to feel the shame and the conflict and the struggle. They could watch the characters on stage grapple with the struggle, but maybe they could go away and feel excited about actually doing something about fair trade. I often get really frustrated with the way things are and wait around for someone more excited or more passionate or more organised than me to do something about it so I can jump on the bandwagon. But the reality is, if you're the one who cares, who gives a damn, then you're the one who is the best person to do something. So I think change happens really slowly and really gradually, and you don't have to start off with something big. You can just start with something little and slowly let your life become more about making a difference in the world and less about making a dent in your credit card.
We're from How Ridiculous, and I'm Derek.
I'm Kyle.
I'm Scott.
I'm Brett.
I grew up in the hills in Lesmurdy with a loving family. It's great.
Yeah, I grew up in Leeming, southern suburbs. Not much special really.
Grown up in Manning, sort of haven't really moved places in my life, just stayed put really.
Yeah, and I grew up in Kensington and actually went to this very primary school where we're filming today.
When I grew up, I definitely wanted to play in the NBA and just get paid to play basketball. It was my real dream.
Yeah, when I grew up I always wanted to be a footballer. I think everyone growing up, all the guys just want to get out there, have a kick and hopefully play for an AFL club.
When I grew up and even now, I still don't really know what I want to do. Sort of just gone with stuff that I've enjoyed, and I've always enjoyed sport. So I've always played sport or done some form of sport.
When I was growing up, I always wanted to be a pilot or a professional sports person.
I went sort of to Phuket for leavers. It's the first time I've ever been to a third world country. I was pretty shocked at how different it is to here, and I suppose how uncomfortable they are. Not for necessarily the wrong reasons, but I suppose it did open my eyes to see that the world's really imbalanced. That yeah, we've just got a lot more than we need, and they've just got a lot less than they probably need. So I suppose that's contributed to my understanding and passion to sort of see justice, really.
So yeah, I've been to Thailand and Indonesia, for Bali and Phuket quite a few times, and the first time I went I was probably only 9 or 10, and I remember first seeing all these kids. There's kids working on the streets, they've barely got two shoes to wear, they got like scraggly clothes and stuff, and I don't know, it just really impacted me, and I didn't really know why, but as I'd obviously matured and obviously got an understanding of what happens in the world, I suppose it really motivated me to help some kids out, because there's people out there that are in positions when they can't get themselves out of it.
So at How Ridiculous, we just make basketball shots. Some of them are pretty ridiculous, and we put them on the internet and we show people on YouTube, and eventually we took it to the Narrows Bridge where Scotty made a big shot with the city in the background, and I always knew that once we made that shot that everyone would start to take notice of the crazy things that we were doing. And we often get asked how much money we've raised, and it's a pretty interesting question that people automatically think of the correlation between how much money you've raised and maybe how much success our little stunt is. And
so I've actually sponsored my own sponsored child through Compassion, and I suppose I've got to see it as a bigger picture. It's not just me sponsoring my child that's going to eradicate poverty in the world, and through How Ridiculous we get to reach out, go to schools, and talk to people about what Compassion stands for and what we stand for as a group, and I get to share that with them, and hopefully through that I can reveal to them what I see in all these kids and why I'm doing it, and hopefully that can change their minds and get them involved.
I guess just through How Ridiculous we've had the opportunity to share compassion with just many people, just through, yeah, as Carl said, we've been to a couple schools and we plan to go to more and just tell the kids and get it into them early that, you know, you just got to open up your heart and just really give to others that need it.
I think the biggest way they can get involved is personally, and yeah, going out there and giving you $44 a month out of your account to sponsor a child, to actually not only sponsor them to live but also to form a relationship with them that is beyond just a monetary value. I think that's probably the greatest way that you can get involved.
I think it's a good reminder that you can use whatever you've got, you know, whatever talents, whatever voice you've got. Everyone's got a voice to be able to use, and if you keep talking long enough or loud enough, you know, the message is going to get out there. And I think the main thing is just do something.
So my name's Chanteya and I'm the founder and manager of the West Australian branch of the Grey Man charity. I grew up in Perth. I was born here in Perth. Spent most of my life here till my 20s when, and then I moved away interstate. I still don't know the answer to that question, 100% truthful, and I still say I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. I wanted to be a part of the solution. I didn't know what or how, but I wanted to be somebody who changed things in a big way. I think, you know, from a really young age, growing up with a Thai mother in that household with her Thai friends, I could see from a very young age that women were not even close to being treated equally in our country as well as in this country. You know, we quite often saw, you know, she had friends, young friends who had old husbands, and then, you know, if the girls complained about anything, the husband would just basically have her deported, and boom, he's got a new one. And yeah, you know, I guess it wasn't until I got older that I, you know, started looking into things a bit more and going back to Thailand myself that I realised exactly how devalued women in Thailand really are. And it's, yeah, it was way worse than what I ever thought. And I remember reading an article about a woman who had been trafficked into Australia to work in a brothel, a Thai woman, and reading about how many, and I thought, how is this happening? Like, I know prostitution and stuff happens in Thailand, but, you know, how are they getting through the Australian government, which is, you know, we're supposed to be one of the best countries in the world. And that's when I really started thinking, you know, I need to do something. So growing up, I always knew that I'd had a sister, Jenny, who had gone missing, but we never really knew exactly what had happened. And as I got into my 20s, you know, the truth came that she had been sold. And so, you know, after a while, I went on this mission to try and find her, which I'm still on now, some years later. But, you know, that was a big factor in what led me to the Grey Man. And you know, like, it is very personal for me. And, you know, every child we rescue, I almost see as my sister. And, you know, well, it's somebody's sister, so, you know, like, people just have no comprehension of exactly what these girls go through. You know, there's girls 8, 9, 10 years old that are made to see 20, 30, you know, adult men a day, you know, and they're beaten and tortured if they refuse in any way. And, you know, it's just horrible. Child trafficking's gone to, what, like the top 3 criminal enterprises in the world? Are you kidding me? Like, you know, it's up there with drugs and weapons. For the first time ever, these 2 criminal enterprises are being rivaled for the top spot. How did this happen, you know? And how are people just not doing anything? That just astounds me, because it's not just Thailand, it's all over the world. America now is one of, you know, the biggest importers, exporters of human trafficking. We know kids and women are coming into Australia. How long before kids and women are going out? I mean, we've seen that happen in America in the last 10, 20 years. People have been going in, trafficking, incoming for so long, and now they're going out as well. You know, it's just crazy. So the Grey Man has a number of rescue teams, which are mostly ex-military, who go undercover in Thailand and surrounding countries as well, and pose as pedophiles to get access to children in brothels. From there, this is how they're able to sort of identify and rescue them. There's also the prevention side, so we're working with other ground root charities, helping them, as well as helping the kids in the community, getting them educated, giving the family some support, and trying to eliminate those factors that contribute to a child's risk of being trafficked. So I've only been physically involved with the Grey Man for about 9 months now. And in that time, I mean, we have done a lot. You know, we've had a massive fundraiser, we've raised lots of money, and we've started our awareness raising, but there's still a lot more to go. But I guess the Grey Man as a whole, you know, since being founded in 2004, the Grey Man has rescued hundreds of women and children from sex trafficking and a few from other forms of slavery. You know, they've put hundreds of kids through school that, you know, and that's stopped them from being trafficked. They've made some excellent progress with the Thai government, you know, getting some agreements in about us doing our work there, having the support of the Thai government, and you know, having a police force designated to us that's corruption free, I guess, was a huge achievement. And you know, we're negotiating every day with the Thai government and other governments to try and have things put into place that's going to make our job easier, I guess. They do look at people's experience for the rescue teams, I guess, because there's that element of danger. Somebody needs to be able to protect themselves, and you know, I guess if a conflict was to happen, they need to be able to assert themselves and get themselves out of that situation. So, no, we welcome people to apply for the Rescue Operatives team, but the recruitment and training is done in Brisbane, so people need to fly over for that. You know, people that are at home, no matter what you're doing, there's some level of volunteering that you can help with. You know, I've got things that I need people to do, just, you know, internet research and making phone calls to, you know, helping coordinate fundraisers and, you know, all sorts of stuff. So no matter what your skill level or what your time availability is, you know, we've got something. And I always say to people, just take on what you can do, and if you can't do any more than that, tell me and I'll give it to someone else.
Hi, my name's Luke. I'm a plumber from Perth, and I'm the director of the Fair Tradie Project, and we build houses across nations for people in need. I grew up in Perth, Western Australia. I've spent the first few years of my life in the country around Bunbury, Collie area, but my majority of my life has been around the Perth metropolitan area. Growing up, I never really knew what I wanted to be. There was a generic, like every kid wanted to be a policeman or a fireman. But it wasn't until I got into my late teens that my brother was in a trade, and he showed me the opportunities in that, and I thought I would go down that path and get into the building industry. Growing up, I saw a lot of ads on TV, World Vision. I even took part in 40-hour famines myself growing up a few years, and but it never really dawned on me just how really great the issues are in other nations. And it wasn't until I visited Uganda in 2009 for myself that I saw face to face and met the people behind the TV screen that were facing these issues every day. And that's when I realised that, yeah, these issues are there and they do need to be addressed. The Fair Tradie Project builds houses in nations where child mortality is a big issue, and we work alongside already established organisations so we primarily provide the skill and the finances and a building, and these organisations put children in it, and from that the organisation give ongoing support with food, education, shelter, clothing, and with this protection it is giving these children a better fighting chance. In the big scheme of things, I don't feel like we've really achieved enough or a great deal. To date we've completed one house which has provided housing for 8 children and their caregivers. We're going to do another building project in November, for another 8 children and their caregivers, and each year we hope to grow and provide more support. So it doesn't matter what field or area that you come from, you can always use that to benefit someone else and to help in the community. For example, I'm a plumber and I'm using my skills to build houses for people in need. And in my area, I'm always looking for builders and people in the trade industry to jump on board and to come on a building trip, or if you don't have the time or you're not in that position to do that, you know, there's always financial support. I mean, all these projects running need financial backing to be able to do things, to do work in the communities. So if you're if you're time poor, then you are probably in a financial position to be able to help to back these organisations. I'm a father of a 6-month-old boy, and I just love him to absolute pieces. And I've gone to other nations and seen children the same age as my son that just don't have a mother or a father to care for them. And my heart really goes out to those children. And I just, I really encourage people and even I put myself in that position to really reach out and to reach out to those children that don't have a mother and a father, that need that help and support, and not just overseas, but there's even children locally that might be missing a father or a mother that really need the parental role. And for me, my own son, I would really, you know, if I wasn't around, if something ever happened to me, I would really hope that someone was there to come in my place and to support and love on my son.
I'm Brooke Jones. I'm a midwife at King Edward Memorial Hospital in Western Australia. I grew up on a farm north of Perth in Bindoon, and I've always been born and bred in WA, Western Australia. I wanted to be a podiatrist, but then I studied nursing and fell in love with it. When I was 19, I went to Kenya on a nursing trip, and I realised that I had no idea what the world was like, and that women and children are often the members of the community that are quite neglected. So I realised that if you want the world to be better, then you need to do something about it. So that led to my midwifery studies. I spent a day in Kibera, which is one of the main slums in Nairobi in Kenya, and it broke my heart that the world was like that, that people lived like that, and here we're so sheltered and I had no idea that people lived like that. And the more, I craved to learn more about it, so I learned a lot about women's health and obstetric problems, because women don't have access to simple basic care that we have here that saves lives. So last year I wanted to go and work in West Africa and volunteer to try to improve maternal mortality, and the opportunity came up to volunteer at an obstetric fistula hospital. Now, obstetric fistulas are when, in these countries, women are often malnourished, they don't have good diet, and they labour from a young age because girls don't necessarily go to school. Now, they get married young and they get pregnant quite often when they're young, and their pelvises, because they're malnourished and they're young, have never formed properly. So they get pregnant with babies, and unfortunately they're never going to be able to birth vaginally. Now, in Australia we have access to caesareans, but in the developing world they are inaccessible and unaffordable quite often. So these girls, they go into labour, and they labour for days and days, and they can't get a caesarean. So the labour is obstructed, and the woman can't deliver the baby until the baby dies and begins to decompose, and only then can they birth the child. And because they've been in labour for 5 to 7 days, the pressure of this baby's skull and all the tissues in their pelvis, it causes holes. So the bladder and the rectum and the vagina, they all become one, because this woman's had a head pressing on all these tissues. So for the rest of her life, she will leak urine and sometimes faeces through her vagina 24/7. The implications of that include the fact that she's always got a groin that's soaked in urine, so that leads to dermatitis. And quite often these women bleed because they've had days of labour. They can, many of them die, but some survive, and they're ostracised from their community because they smell and they're different, and there's lack of understanding that So the hospital I went to, it repairs these fistulas and it's quite effective. They treat about 400 women a year and it's called the Aberdeen Women's Centre in Sierra Leone. So the West Australian Department of Health supported me to go there. And 6 weeks before I got there, they opened a maternity unit because they decided if we want to, we're treating fistulas, but we've got to stop them happening, and that's by providing basic but essential maternity care, including caesareans when they're needed. So this maternity unit opened 6 weeks before I got there, and in Sierra Leone, 1 in 8 women are dying in childbirth, which is equating to about 1 in 50 births. This is one of the highest rates in the world of death in childbirth. So the maternity unit I went to, we booked in 100 women a month to birth, and during my time there, I had 600 births, over 600 births, and every mother lived, which was quite miraculous in Sierra Leone. I think what the project, the Aberdeen Women's Centre, which was the project I was involved in Sierra Leone, I think that what it did for maternal outcomes and for Global Millennium Goal number 5 is that it showed West African communities that they don't need to have these death rates in childbirth. The women don't need to be dying. It showed the midwives that we're working with that they do have the skills to provide life-saving care, and that life-saving care is cheap and it's achievable. And I think the skills and what we did in Sierra Leone, it's transferable to so many other low resource settings. So yeah, I think it's really amazing what we did there, and I'm really privileged to be a part of it.
So my name's Michael, I'm the campaign manager at the Global Poverty Project. I'm currently running a campaign around polio. I guess a couple of the other things I do is I'm a student here at UWA, finishing off my law degree, although I'm not on campus a lot, and I also tutor international relations for 2nd and 3rd year students here. So I was born here in Perth, but spent 8 years living over in the UK. Well, I used to actually want to be a historian, and then I realised that the thing I was most passionate about when I was studying history was actually ideas and social movements, so individuals who had changed the world. Yeah, so I guess I left school for end of 2005, start of 2006, and I did really well to be able to basically do any course I wanted at uni. I kind of realised that, well, actually the reason why I did really well at school wasn't because I was particularly intelligent or smart or anything like that, because I'm not. I'm probably as average as you can be. It was merely that I'd been given the opportunity to learn and the opportunity to study, and I guess I'd seized it. And I guess I became a firm believer in the fact that if given the opportunity, you really can make your dreams come true. But I became aware that there's 1.4 billion people living in extreme poverty around the world who perhaps are some of the most hardest working and inspiring people you'll ever meet, but because they're not given that opportunity, they can't make their dreams come true. And so to me, that was a powerful motivator in terms of wanting to go out and make a difference. So I'm currently running a campaign around polio in the lead up to the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. We're asking for that to be placed on the agenda. And really, I guess, what my role is to basically ensure that the government commits, gives a financial commitment at CHOGM. And I guess it's about running a campaign, which we launched 2 months ago, and it's an online petition where people basically sign on and ask world leaders to commit to funding the gap of US $590 million, which is currently limiting eradication efforts. And why are we campaigning on polio? How does it relate to extreme poverty? Well, I think when you look at polio, global collaboration, organisations like Rotary International have reduced the spread by 99% in the last 2 decades, in my lifetime alone. And what this is a powerful good news story. It illustrates the life-changing impact of our foreign aid. And what it also does, I think, is demonstrates progress in the broader fight against poverty. It's one of the things which I was fortunate enough to do earlier this year was to meet with the Prime Minister herself, Prime Minister Julia Gillard, and ask her whether or not she would put polio on the agenda at CHOGM. And she looked me in the eye and she said she had just been in America and that she had met Melinda Gates, who together with her husband Bill Gates is doing a lot of stuff for polio. And she said to me, Michael, I very much agree this is something we should do, but I need your help. And what she meant is she needed my help to demonstrate the public case to the public why this is something the government should do. And if I just share briefly, this is a letter she sent me in follow-up where she basically said, "Thank you for raising this important issue with me during our meeting in March this year." And then she basically says at CHOGM later next month, she will put this on the agenda and raise it with the other countries present, their obligations to the Global Polio Eradication Initiative. Well, one of the most effective things you can do, which I always tell members of the audience when I'm speaking, is to actually go home and write just a brief email. It takes 5 minutes to your local member of parliament and say, whoever it is, as my local representative in parliament, I want you to do something about extreme poverty. This is an issue I care about, and I think that Australia should be a leader on these issues.
Hi, my name's Daniel Scarparolo. I'm the chairperson of Project Chanteya. I grew up in Perth. I've been here all my life. When I grew up, I wanted to be a writer, and I'm on that way now. I first became aware of biodiversity loss when I started working at Perth Zoo. I really saw that the loss of one species could have a potentially devastating effect on an entire ecosystem, and once you see that sort of thing, you can't help but want to become involved. The issue I'm involved in is numbat conservation. I first got involved with a community group that was looking for a web designer. I helped them set up a fairly simple website, and I've been with them 5 years now, and I'm the chairperson of Project Numbat now. So numbats are a Western Australian species. They're only found now in the southwest of Western Australia. There's believed to be only about 1,000 left in the wild, and that's less than the number of giant pandas. And as we all know, giant pandas have a lot more press than the numbat. If you ask a lot of Western Australians, they'll probably look at you and go, well, what's that? The numbat is an endangered species. The main issues facing them are habitat destruction and feral predators, particularly the fox and the cat. Project Numbat is a community-based not-for-profit organisation. We work to raise awareness in the community about the numbat and also in schools. We also raise funds for things like research and radio collars for tracking numbats, and we work with our partners to help conserve this unique West Australian species. While we do provide funds to certain projects, we really do see ourselves making a difference in raising awareness about the numbat. When we go to community days or into school groups, gradually we're starting to see more and more people actually know what a numbat is, and then they realise, hey, this amazing animal is actually in trouble, and we're hoping to be able to use that groundswell of support to really affect great change. If you want to help the numbat, you can become a member or make a donation to Project Numbat. If you want to help groups like ours and you don't think you have the skills to offer, you'd be surprised. For me it was web development, for you it could be something else.
I'm Shona Hunter, I'm 28 years old and I'm a mother of 2, and I've been volunteering for fair trade for about 6 years. I grew up in Albany, which is a small town on the coast of Western Australia, the south coast, and I spent the first 18 years of my life there and then moved to Fremantle, and I've been in Fremantle since then. As a child I really wanted to be an actress, but as a teenager I developed a fondness for the environment and for social justice issues, and I started wanting to save the world. I was a manager at an organic shop in Fremantle, and the roaster of our coffee, our fair trade coffee, invited me to come and be a part of a group of businesses that were working together to promote the availability and awareness of fair trade in WA. And so I went along to the group curious about fair trade. I'd never heard about it before. And as soon as I realised what it involved and what it was about, and how trade worked currently and what fair trade wanted to do, I became immediately passionate for it. Fair trade is an aware form of consumption, so it's about when you go shopping, it's about looking at the product you're going to buy and thinking about where it came from and who made it and under what conditions did they make that product. How good were their working conditions and how much did they get paid? And that's pretty easy to discern when you look at the cost of a product, and if something is very, very cheap, it's questionable how much the person who made it got paid to make it. But fair trade is about ensuring that each person gets paid fairly for their time and for their products. And if somebody's getting paid fairly for their work, they can then afford to send their children to school, they can afford healthcare for their family, and they could afford to invest in their business and invest in the future. if you're consuming something it's costing you nothing, the person who made it hasn't been paid properly. And so that their family is stuck in this cycle of poverty. And quite often, families in places like Cambodia, they resort to selling their own children into slavery, and especially the girls into sex slavery and into sex trafficking across the world, so that they can actually make money to afford healthcare for the rest of their family, to afford education for the rest of their family. So for me to consume this product at such a low price, has such a high cost for everyone else across the world, and such a high cost for this young girl, this young 6-year-old girl who's getting sold into sex slavery for the rest of her life. And as a consumer, you are actually demanding that standard of living for these people, because you're demanding that really, really low price. You're demanding that your shoes are only $20. You're demanding that your t-shirts are only $5, and therefore you're demanding that the person who made them works for nothing and ends up having to sell their kids in order to survive. I'm not comfortable with that. So in order to solve world poverty, world hunger, slavery, and all these massive, massive issues, the easiest way to do that is to consume fair trade products. And I wanted to volunteer to help boost the consumption of fair trade products, to help create an awareness to the greater community about fair trade. As a volunteer for fair trade, I feel like I've achieved a lot. I've successfully lobbied the city of Fremantle to become a fair trade city, and I've created the Pocket Guide to Fair Trade, which links consumers to fair trade products. The great thing about fair trade is that as an individual, you can do something really easy. You can just choose to buy fair trade products. You don't have to give up any of your time, and that works. But if you do want to give up your time, you can volunteer for your local group and get more involved by educating yourself and educating your friends and family.